The Dalai Lama has announced definitely that the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue beyond his death, and that the Ganden Phodrang Foundation will be the sole authority charged with the process of searching and recognizing the reincarnation. This has drawn a strong reaction from China, which maintains that the CCP government has the right to approve any successor of the Dalai Lama, and that the reincarnation process must be followed as stated in the Chinese law. China, which considers the current Dalai Lama a separatist, has asserted that only Beijing has the authority to decide who his successor will be. All of this surrounds a tradition that is 600 years old and set to experience significant departures from the traditional methods of recognizing the successor of the Dalai Lama. Traditionally, the second highest religious authority, the Panchen Lama, has led the effort to recognize the successor of the Dalai Lama. However, with the validity of the 11th Panchen Lama in doubt, due to China's abduction of the last recognized Panchen Lama in 1995, there remains doubt as to the true authority, and the Dalai Lama hopes his proclamation of the Ganden Phodrang Foundation as that authority will be sufficient to see off any Chinese contender for the office of the Dalai Lama. Let's open up this discussion, and joining me on the telecast is Lagyari Namgyal Dolkar. Thank you very much, Ms. Dolkar. And my first question to you about how dangerous a proposition it is going to be for the Dalai Lama to name his successor, because 30 years ago when his successor was named, he was a 6-year-old child. He was abducted reportedly by the Chinese regime, and 30 years later what Beijing has released in a statement is that this particular individual is safe and does not want to interfere in this entire matter and would not like to come in the public eye. So the question of how fraught is this entire process of appointing the next Dalai Lama?
Well, Megha, before really addressing this concern that you have raised, which I actually find quite difficult to trace, is the fact that today we have found out that His Holiness is doing very well in terms of his physical health, mental and spiritual health. So he's doing well, and we hope that he will be continuing to live with us as he has promised. So let's just begin by addressing that matter first. But when we are talking about the reincarnation of His Holiness, the announcement that he's made in terms of affirmation that he will, the Dalai Lama's institution will continue, is very important, because and more importantly, the fact that he's added that no one has the authority to intervene and meddle in this matter. So whatever you have mentioned, I'm not sure how much of a historical fact it is, but the reality is that when it comes to the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama over the centuries, it has entirely been the decision of the Dalai Lama institution itself, the individual himself, and the Tibetan people. Honestly speaking, the intervention from China, that's something that we have never ever had when it comes to Dalai Lama's institution. China today, they have mentioned about the golden urn concept of how we should be sticking with that. However, historically, if we are addressing that matter, this is in dealing with the Qing emperor, that is the Manchu emperor and not the Chinese emperor, and no Dalai Lama, except for the 11th Dalai Lama, has actually followed that process. But more importantly, the Dalai Lama's institution far precedes more than 250 years of this golden urn, or actually the Qing emperor, Qing dynasty that we are talking about. Having said that, I think one thing that we should be very careful and focused on right now is that His Holiness is healthy and hearty, and that even if when we are addressing the matter in, after decades, we know that China, whoever China appoints, because we know that China will intervene, Chinese government will intervene and appoint their puppet, because that's what they wish to do, but then no nation will accept it. More importantly, the followers of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, whether one is a Buddhist follower or admirer of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, will never accept anyone that Chinese Communist Party appoints.
I have with me Acharya Yeshi Funsok on the telecast with me as well. He's the former Deputy Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in exile, and he's the Senior Advisor of Bharat Tibet Sayong Manch. Acharya Funsok, again the question about the validity and the credibility of the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, and there is going to be an obvious and most definitive interference that is going to be made by the Chinese central government. In fact, China has already appointed what it says is the successor of the Dalai Lama. How are the Tibetans across the globe going to confront this conflict? And again the same question, how safe is the successor of the Dalai Lama if and when he is named?
Actually, day before also we have discussed about the reincarnations of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. As I mentioned, it is early to discuss. Today, the statement of His Holiness Dalai Lama, I've also not mentioned about the reincarnation, but he have just written a statement. It's mentioned the Ganden Phodrang institution will be the as a remain and constantly, and legacy will continue. That only statement has been, I have seen and I've written, and I've read out. Even His Holiness has given a brief histories about today's depressed or the statement or the inaugural statement of the ongoing Tibetan Buddhist spiritual leaders convention, which has been started from today, and it's just given an idea to how the continuity of the legacy of His Holiness Dalai Lamas on the basis of the Ganden Phodrang, and that is the historic of the Tibetan Buddhist our tradition. There's nothing any we cannot, I think, say this is a, we cannot say this is the, I think, new things or old things.
Okay.
But Chinese government, as you have mentioned, it is there some, I think it's what we can say unfortunate, because they occupied Tibet completely, and then they are interfering after the Jiang Zemin regime. Before that, even in the Deng Xiaoping and Mao, they have mentioned only how to continue to have the Tibet autonomous region. They never touch about the reincarnations of His Holiness Dalai Lama. But it comes from the Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. And for the last three leaders, Chinese leaders, they are just convincing by themselves, try to make too many resolutions. But it will be not, I think, successful. As you have mentioned, for the hours Panchen Rinpoche, which is recognized by His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Tibetan community. Today, unfortunately, he is not in front of us for after the 1995 17 May. But they always saying he's in alive and he's doing his study. But Tibetan peoples and the followers and the Tashil Lumpu and the other monasteries, institutions, all the Tibetan Buddhist schools, we believe only which is recognized by His Holiness Dalai Lama, not the puppet which is recognized by the Jiang Zemin. So therefore, this is, I think, always some issues are coming, but from the fifth Dalai Lama, the Ganden Phodrang was started. From the first to fourth Dalai Lama, it is just not the head of the Tibet, not the spiritual of the leader of the Tibet, but from the fifth Dalai Lama, it was begin. And now, after the 2011, as I mentioned, September 24, His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama has demolished his political power. And now His Holiness always keeps saying, I am the only one, the religious leader, spiritual leader of the Tibetan community, and then the non-Tibetan believer and the Tibetan Buddhist traditional religion, and of course the Dalai Lama from the Mongol, even from the mainland China.
All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that exhaustive information. Tenzing, I'm going to come to you, and you know, then the question continues to arise, as we have been asking successively, about who is going to protect the people of Tibet, who is going to protect the traditions of the Dalai Lama and Buddhism. Already mentioned that the Panchen Lama that was appointed suddenly disappeared. It's been 30 years, there's no trace of him. I don't know if there are countries in the West, whether it's Europe or America, whether they have enough vested interest to get embroiled in this, but it is most definitely sure that India's interests align with the Tibetan population that it has in the country. Over more than 100,000 Tibetans that reside in India in different parts of the country. What is it that the Tibetans, the Dalai Lama, expect at this point of time from their protectorate, that's India?
Yeah, firstly, His Holiness the Dalai Lama today made a very important declaration by saying that there will be 15th Dalai Lama, that the institution of Dalai Lama will continue. That's a very important decision that has been declared today. And along with that, His Holiness said that the process of selecting the next Dalai Lama will be carried on by the Ganden Phodrang Trust, which is directly under His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And he said that the Ganden Phodrang alone is the only decision making, and therefore no one else. So that's a very clear-cut decision that being made and that it been declared today, which means that the China or any other party would have no role in this, because most importantly, we must all know the main reason why we are discussing Dalai Lama is that the Dalai Lama is a Tibetan spiritual political leader, not Chinese leader. So therefore, only the Tibetan people get to make our own decisions. And the Tibetan people have over decades been asking His Holiness the Dalai Lama to maintain this institution for us. That's most important factor. Now, Megha, in your question, you mentioned Panchen Lama. Now, Panchen Lama is a separate Lama. It's not the Dalai Lama. Panchen Lama was recognized 30 years ago, and the real reincarnation that His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave the recognition was kidnapped and taken away along with his family and teacher by the Chinese, and has been missing ever since. And China installed another Lama with Gensin Norbu as a name. And that's how China has been maintaining that kind of duplicitous religious leadership, only by using the military and political authority, and has nothing to do with the Tibetan people. Now, Panchen Lama or Dalai Lama, these are the spiritual leaders. They are recognized mainly because the Tibetan people love and respect and hold up to them with worshipping, and that makes the Dalai Lama the importance of it. Now, His Holiness the Dalai Lama already said there will be 15, and this situation will continue as it is. Now, as far as the Chinese are concerned, now let us look at the the Chinese Communist Party, which was actually founded about 80 years ago, and the People's Republic of China (PRC) was founded in 1949. It was almost about 76 years old. And how can this 76-year-old organization, which is now questioning the entire legacy of His Holiness, which is 400 years old. And if you look at back in its history, between the First and the Second World War, China was ruled by Republic of China, which is now in Taiwan. So if we actually look into the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party and People's Republic of China, they are themselves just mere 70 years old.
Yes.
So therefore, the real legacy of His Holiness the Dalai Lama will continue.
But nobody is questioning the illegitimacy of China when it calls Tibet its own territory. Countries across the globe, including America and India, call for the autonomy of the people of Tibet and provide them the territory that they had to leave in 1959 after the invasion that was made by the Chinese Communist Party on their land. But at the same time, it's quite the irony, Tenzin, that US and the rest of the world, even India, continues to follow the One China policy. So how, and it is at the same time, you know, India has more at stake than the United States of America when the autonomy of Tibet is concerned. So how do we resolve this very complicated issue that has been going on? This conflict, this row has been going on for the last, I don't know, since 1959. And Vijayakranti, would you like to shed more light into this?
One thing, we should first understand the political significance of what Dalai Lama has said today. Number one, in 2011, he had announced, because there was a lot of confusion about whether there will be next Dalai Lama or not, how the next Dalai Lama will be found, what will be the procedure, and China was already aggressive about owning the whole process and even the institution of Dalai Lama. At that time, Dalai Lama had said that when he becomes 90, then he will give his final opinion. So today, he has, I would say, given the final answer to the basic question, which is whether the institution of Dalai Lama is going to continue after this Dalai Lama who is 14th to the next 15th or not. And he has made it clear that this institution will continue. You know, that solves a lot of other confusion, because people were thinking that Dalai Lama may either totally abandon or close the whole chapter of Dalai Lama institution and say it is over, or he may find out some other young person and designate him in his own position. There were a lot of things were going on. So, but today is, I think it's a historic statement. Dalai Lama has once for all made it clear. Number one, that institution of Dalai Lama is going to continue. And number two, which is still more important, is he has made it very clear in clear words. He has said, and I quote him, he says that the Ganden Phodrang Trust has sole authority. Ganden Phodrang is the institution, the trust, the organization which controls the school, the institution of Dalai Lama and manages his affairs. And he says that Ganden Phodrang the trust has sole authority to recognize the future incarnation, and he says no one else has any such authority to interfere in this matter.
No, but my question over here is, while these statements are important and relevant at this point of time, and keep this authority with the Dalai Lama and the institution, the agency that has been mentioned, at the same time, there has been a response that has been made by the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson. But why hasn't India spoken about it? Why has there not been a comment from United States of America?
One thing is, let us not expect too much from other governments. The fight is between two governments, the Tibetan government and the Chinese government. Dalai Lama made a statement, and Chinese government has again said the same thing, that they have authority, which means the it's very strange. that a communist party who has no faith in religion, who doesn't believe in reincarnation, who treats religion as an opium of the world, people, is suddenly becoming interested in reincarnation. And they are the people, Xi Jinping and every predecessor, right from Mao, who have been using every bad, abusive language against the current Dalai Lama. Now the question is, if Dalai Lama is so bad, why the hell you are interested in occupying the next Dalai Lama? It clearly shows, number one, this is admission by Xi Jinping, number one, that the Communist Party, the PRC government, and he himself have failed in taming the Tibetan people. They are still surprised that even 70 years after the Chinese takeover, the current generation of Tibetans whose grandfather, grandmother have never seen Dalai Lama, they are demanding Dalai Lama's return. They are asking for freedom for Tibet. So this means, number one, Xi Jinping has realized that Dalai Lama is a great force. Without him, they cannot run Tibet. So that is why they want to occupy him despite being so abusive against him.
Yeah,
so number one,
everybody. Yeah. I think the entire world and China itself understands why is it that it wants to intervene in the process of the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. We've already seen that China has invaded Tibet. We've already seen that China has brainwashed Tibetans who are at this point of time living in the territory of Tibet, and those who do not accept the invasion of China of their territory have fled away. But at the same time, there needs to be, yes, we totally understand, but my same question arises that, you know, China does not accept the legitimacy of the successor of the Dalai Lama until and unless an approval is provided by the central government of China. And on the other hand, the Dalai Lama is itself, and rightly so, talking about the cultural and the religious process that needs to be followed. But again, I bring forward the point that anything that is not acceptable to China, and especially against a group of people, a community which is much less powerful than the Chinese Communist Party, it claims complete stake. And the example, the Panchen Lama was abducted. He disappeared for 30 years. And that's why I say, if India and other powerful nations are not going to support the Dalai Lama's cause, it is going to become a wasted cause.
You know, I would disagree that it will be a wasted cause. So far, Indian government has not supported Tibetans politically since 1951. They have rather sided with the Chinese government. American government has been talking everything, doing nothing, and still Tibet has survived. The resistance of Tibetan people today, I have traveled inside Tibet, all the provinces. Of course, I'm a journalist, they don't allow journalists. I have traveled as a tourist, and I have met people, hundreds and thousands of them, whom I can see they are still determined. They are not brainwashed. They have not given up. So this is why Xi Jinping is worried.
Is there a real chance that Tibet will be freed from Chinese invasion today?
I don't know, because the Chinese power is so big. But
exactly,
we have seen the history of Soviet Union. Who, either you or me, had ever thought there will be a Bangladesh? Who thought it? And the Soviet Union broke one day suddenly. You know, history is a road roller. It walks in its own way and in its own direction. So you don't be surprised if this current China breaks like Soviet Union one day, and at that time, the history will ask all those colonies who want freedom. If Tibet, if Xinjiang, which is East Turkestan, if South Mongolia, if Hong Kong, they are surviving till then with their resistance, history will give them freedom. So I don't.
Okay. Coming back to, fair enough, you made a point. Tenzin, coming back to you. Now again, it boils down to the fact that do the people of Tibet, does the Tibetan community have ample support by way of political rights, by way of rights to ownership of property, by ways of financial assistance that is going to support them in fighting the behemoth that is China. And this, again keep asking the question about the safety of the protection of the successor of the Dalai Lama, because these are all matters that are intertwined.
तो मेघा जी एक बार सुनिए. See, the institution of the Dalai Lama is 400 years old, and this has been kept alive by, just as Vijay Kranti was saying, kept alive by the resilience of the Tibetan people. In your question, you seem to be enamored by China's money and weapons. If Indians were to look at British Empire in the same way, India would never have been free and independent. Yep. India's independence has happened mainly because the Indian people never gave up in 200 years. And then finally, when the Second World War really corrupted British Empire to the core, the British
let's also understand there were a lot of developments that happened in Europe that led to the complete disintegration of the British Empire. But I'm not enamored by China. I think India has a number of conflicts with China and already is facing a number of these aggressive Chinese tactics of taking over Indian territory that is integral to India, whether we talk about Sikkim or Ladakh or Arunachal Pradesh. So we have a lot of our issues, and I completely agree that Tibet should never have been invaded by China. India should have supported Tibetans' cause, and because it's not just about the sovereignty of the country, it's not just about the rights of the people of Tibet, but at the same time a very strategic buffer zone that safeguards India has been invaded by China, makes life so much more difficult for us along the line of actual control, and our territories and states that are sharing the border with now what China calls its own territory. But my question is, why aren't other countries, including India, still not coming out in support of the Dalai Lama? I mean, I am yet to see a statement from an Indian head of state or the Indian government or the Ministry of External Affairs. I am yet to see a statement from the United States. So it's important to show solidarity and not just show it and speak it, but also act on it.
Yeah, so listen. So last year, United States changed its basic law looking at the issue of Tibet. United States had said that Tibet was in the history free and independent country, and that Tibetan people have right to self-determination. That's a very important change in the basic perception of United States on Tibet. And with that, United States had completely negated China's long stand that Tibet had always been part of China. That had been negated by United States. And United States and also Canada had also passed this resolution by saying that they would stand with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in the Dalai Lama's call for making the decision about his reincarnation. Now, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is here in India. He is loved and respected by the Buddhists all across the Himalayas, including those in Nepal and Bhutan. So therefore, Indian peoples, especially in the Himalayas, the strategic border population of India, for them the Dalai Lama is really important. So people in the Himalayas have already voted and spoken that the government of India stand by the Dalai Lama's decision. And on the 6th of July, Indian ministers are going to come to Dharamshala. I'm sure on that day, these ministers will speak what the people of India desire, that they stand with His Holiness the Dalai Lama wholeheartedly. Now, one of the important reasons why many of the countries are not speaking up for Tibet is because they are economically, for trade and supply chains, they are dependent on China. And these are the same countries who have been taking advantage of Tibet. They have been benefiting at the cost of Tibet when Tibet itself is undergoing a genocide in Tibet. Our religion, culture are being destroyed. More than million Tibetans have been killed. In this situation, the Tibetan people have kept issue of Tibet alive, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, right at the age of 90, we are still robustly moving forward.
Yeah.
And we know the people of the world will come around, and there will be a free and independent tomorrow. And India and Tibet relationship as a brotherly, friendly relationship, that too will be prevailed in future.
Okay. Thanks for that remark. Thank you, Tenzin, and I thank the rest of my panelists for joining me in that discussion and sharing their opinions on the matter.